All right, it's showtime, everybody. Um, Good evening to you all. I hope you hop on. I want to welcome those of you who may be watching this on the replay. Make sure that you stay because this is going to be an extremely exciting conversation. As you're coming in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If it's Hampton, Newport News, if it's outside of the city, if it's outside of the state, do us a really big favor and share this. I can see if you shared it too. Share it to your Facebook feed, take the link and text somebody because we are about to have a really candid conversation tonight. We got some amazing questions. We're pulling covers back, and this is going to be a whole lot of fun. So I promise you that. So as you're coming in, come on, y'all say hello. Say hello to us. I want to see who's tuning in with us. I see Dr. Natalie is up here. I see Miss Robbie's up here. Who else is with me tonight? Come on, let's get our views up a little bit higher, especially Hampton Roads, because we have two of Hampton's finest. Dr. Angela Birdwright, good to see you tonight. Sister Caroline, hey, Nicole. Um, I'm excited for this interview. The two gentlemen that I'm interviewing tonight, we just had a couple of minutes of this uncut conversation, and I just was able to talk about some things. It was really exciting. I can't wait for y'all to get to know them in the light that I know them. And so I will not belabor the conversation. I know y'all didn't come here just to hear me do a grand introduction. Y'all came here for our special guest tonight. So get those shares up. I need to be at least 50 live or higher. I know we got some people watching on YouTube too. So I want to say hello to all of you. But we have two special guests with us tonight. The first is One of C3's very own, our Assistant Chief of the Hampton Police Department, Kenneth Ferguson. We're going to bring him in the chat this time. Come on, y'all put the virtual emoji hands together as he comes in. What up?
How you
Good
doing,
to see you.
Dr.
How you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm
I
doing
am
good.
I am doing well. And I want to introduce our other special guest tonight as well, the Commonwealth Attorney of Hampton. Let's welcome Attorney Anton Bell. Let's bring him up. Come on, put those virtual emojis together. Y'all, let's celebrate.
How's it going?
I'm doing great. I am doing great. So shout out to both of you. Thank you so much for tuning in with me tonight. I know that y'all are both extremely busy people, but it's good to see y'all. I mean, y'all not like in uniform or nothing like that. Y'all look like me. We just real
Dude,
chill. So I'm sure people don't know this side of y'all, but that's why we wanted to have this conversation tonight too, to let people know that there is a other side as well. And so the topic of tonight is we need to talk. Our communities are in crisis. Now, I'm sure that y'all been talking a whole lot. Maybe you've been listening more than you've been talking. I don't know. But I got a whole bunch of questions, and me and the people, I'm representing the people tonight, can only hope that y'all have a whole bunch of answers. So, Honor is already in the room. Assistant Chief, Attorney Bell, Dr. Leslie. If it's okay with y'all, I'm an honorable person. I hope you know that. Can I call y'all by your first name? Is that okay?
hey, go
Absolutely.
for it.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. So we got Anton, Kenny, and I'm Leslie for everybody who does not know. So let's get into it. Let's jump right in and give the people what they want. I also want to shout out really quickly. I don't know if he's watching. My brother-in-law, Phil Bailey, helped me to discuss some of this stuff too, as I was processing all that was going on in our nation. And so I want to shout him out as well. But I want to get into some of these questions. So let's talk about y'all's career paths, right? Um, Historically, many Black Americans have held adverse or negative perceptions of law enforcement. I'm sure y'all know that, right?
Hmm.
I want to know, did y'all ever share in that perception growing up? Did you have a negative image about law enforcement growing up?
I'll start off. Yes. And my family is from the South. My mother and father are both from Arkansas and the South. And I can recall various incidents that where you may have, as a little boy, encountering police, and you could just see the behavior of my parents change. And that was an early message for me to know that you got to conduct yourself, sit upright, and, yes, sir, no, sir, and sometimes disrespect on a simple traffic stop. So that early
Mm,
perception, and just my friends and neighbors growing up, you hear negative things about the police. And you got to remember, back when I was growing up, most of the police officers were white, so there was nobody that looked like me. And there wasn't women, there wasn't people of color that you encountered a lot. So you had this perception, but the main thing was the way my parents react, and so which was sending a message to me at an early age. So yes, to answer your question, yes, it was very negative growing up.
And in the South too, yeah. Anton, what about you?
Okay, for me, it was a little different because my mom was like really huge on law and order as a person, and I grew up in the hood, and so for us, it was like when you saw the police, someone did something. They may have been bringing you home to your parent because Nene stole something out the 7-Eleven, or they may be coming there because somebody may have shot up the place or whatever. So I've seen all of that. But my mom was still really big. And I'll tell you, as a kid, I remember my brother, we used to catch the transportation. Back in the day, TRT is what it was called. And I remember my brother, when he was 13, which means I would have been around 10 years old, my brother ran home with his best friend because they actually witnessed a murder on the bus. Someone got mad at someone, and they wanted their radio, and the guy wouldn't give it to him, and he literally pulled out a gun and he shot him. And my brother ran home with his best friend, and I remember them telling my mom about what happened. And I'm 10, and I remember this like yesterday. I remember my mom put him and his friend in the car and took them to the police station. And the message that it sent me was to be civically engaged, and that if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear concerning the police. Even though whenever I saw the police when I was young, it was because of a negative situation. But still, one of the things that she instilled in us was, as long as you don't put your hand on something that doesn't belong to you, as long as you're doing what you know you're supposed to do, you should not be in a situation where that negative interaction will occur. So that was pretty much my background growing up.
Well, see, and I also grew up in the hood. I grew up in Flint. My parents are from Arkansas, but I grew up in Flint, and now everybody knows Flint as the water and all that. So it was really tough. A lot of gangs and things like that going on. So the people where I lived, and I grew up as my mother was a single parent. And so we moved 13 different times growing up as a kid. So I was always a new kid. So I encountered and saw a lot. And I guess it was kind of contribute to the negative perception, even real or unreal. But it was just that negative vibe that when I was growing up, that the police or here come the man, that sort of thing. And so it was never a positive thing. It's funny because now I'm a police officer. We'll talk about that later. But
now when you were growing up, though, I heard you talk about like the vibe was negative of police. Did you grow up on like NWA and rap groups like that?
Pastor Leslie, I'm much older than that. I'm much older than that.
Okay. Well, you said it, not me.
Yeah. But yes, I know I go back to. But yes, I know about NWA. I go back to LL Cool J and
LL Cool J. Come on, Mama say knock you out. That's what we go back to.
Okay,
it was fun, So yeah, I go back to that. But no, NWA was early '90s, but that's around the time I started my police career.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. Now that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
What was happening, with the Rodney King, early '91,
and
they were talking about Ice Cube and all that, and we'll get into that. I don't want to take away, but now
Anton kind of told us a little bit like what started him into his journey of being a prosecutor. So why did you want to become a police? Like, what drew you to become that?
I didn't grow up.
It called you?
You know what? I was in the military, and in the military, I worked as what they call Master at Arms. I didn't start off like that. And Master at Arms in the Navy is a military police. And so when I got out and decided that wasn't going to be my career, and not being from this area, I decided I was going to pursue policing. And the rest is history. And I became a police officer from that standpoint. But I also realized that I'm the oldest of 4. And I was always a protector. So what I've learned about myself, I don't like people who pick on others. I'm a protector of those who can't protect themselves. That's who I am. And that kind of go in line with law enforcement, what it should be.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, here's a question that I'm sure people other than me want to know. Did you ever feel a conflict within yourself in choosing between your Blackness and your career? Like, what was that like? If you could be honest.
Yeah. No, my Blackness is no. I'm always, because here's the thing, I can take the uniform off. I can take that uniform off and you won't know what I do for a living, but I can't take, I'm Black everywhere I go. And so I represent that. So not only that, I'm a father, I'm a husband, but my Blackness is who I am. However, and police is what I do. But the ideal is that they should mirror each other. The values that I have at my household should mirror what I see at the police department, really. And so sometimes there is a conflict in terms of how policing is done throughout the country. Yes, from that standpoint, but not my Blackness as a man. I'm always Black first, and then the police is what I do. The conflict sometimes.
That's a tweetable right there. Somebody needs to write that down. My Blackness is who I am. A police officer is what I do. That's a quotable right there. I should make you a T-shirt. I don't know if you would get in trouble for wearing it.
But Leslie, it does, when you see things that's going on in the country, it does, you get labeled in this profession. I've been called everything by Black people because some Black people look at you as a sellout. It's like, how can you do this? Let me tell you the story real quick. I met a lady, first time I ever met her. She's a family member, first time meeting her. There was a wedding. And, when you get together with family and friends, first thing you want to know is, what do you do for a living? And I'm very reluctant to do that, not because I'm ashamed, but I do that because I want you to get to know me first. But in this occasion, I'm in law enforcement. And her response to me was, so you part of the Black men that are out here killing our young Black men out here on the street. And that's what she said to me.
God.
And I've heard that more than once. And that breaks my heart that some people look at me as part of the problem. But I carry that burden. I realize, because I know the history. When you look at the perception, we talked about the perception of policing, and I know what that, I talked about my parents, and I don't mean to be taken over. It's just, I'm going, so you gotta let me go.
Oh, go for it, bro.
But you look at the perception, where do that perception come from? That perception comes from the history of policing, which is horrific in this country. If you look at police in this country, starting with the slave patrols, that's the history. Talking about the corruption that was going on with elections and promotions, and the mob police was used as muscle. And then go into the 60s, the civil unrest, and dealing with that kind of stuff. So people see the dogs attacking peaceful protesters. So that's the history. And I can't ignore this. When I get in this field, I accept that burden. And for the purpose of, when you see me, I always tell people, I'm the change that you want to see. Instead of looking at as part of a disgrace or how can you do it, look at me as possibly the change that you want to see in law enforcement. Okay,
so do you think it's a media thing though? Like, I just wonder, why don't we see more perspectives like yours?
Because that's not the narrative that they want to show.
There you go.
I mean, if you want to be honest about it, that's not the narrative they want to show. Because here's the thing. I want to know why CNN and MSNBC and Fox and all of the rest of them don't show Black prosecutors who are doing the right thing. All you hear about are prosecutors who do the wrong thing. But let me see some, because there's plenty of us who are doing the right thing. We're not looking at cases as a number or as a statistic or just trying to get a conviction. We're looking at those individuals as people. We're looking at those individuals as, okay, can they be rehabilitated? Can they grow from this situation and not be a danger to our community in the future? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to make sure that you're not endangering our community when all is said and done. And so when you talk about law enforcement, the national narrative is that either police officers are doing the negative or the wrong thing, and that's what's highlighted, or prosecutors are not holding police accountable for when they do the wrong thing. And they don't talk to the ones who will hold the police accountable, who will prosecute an officer if he shoot an unarmed person and it was a wrong shooting. So it's the national narrative.
Yeah, they looking for ratings, not like a
Yeah,
revolution or nothing like
yeah.
that. That's crazy. Well, in what ways do you feel your status as a Black man has benefited or aided you in your successes, if any?
Oh,
Okay, so
go ahead. You
oh,
go.
all right.
You go.
Oh, so for me, if you go in my office, and Kenny can tell you this, if
Yeah.
you go in my office, I have it's like a museum to the civil rights movement because
Hmm.
I am a civil rights activist at heart, and
Okay.
so I got, I mean, I'm talking about like huge posters of like Martin Luther King in Birmingham doing when he penned the letter from Birmingham,
Yeah.
RFK. I got the track stars with their arms up with the black glove on during the 1968 Olympics. You know, I got the dogs attacking some black guy during the 60s during the civil rights movement, and the firemen hosing down children during the civil
Mm.
rights movement. I have all of that in my office because I always want to remember I stand on the shoulders of individuals who bled and died that I would never ever meet. But because of what they did and because of the sacrifices that they made, not only am I able to vote, not only am I able to send my
Yeah.
son to whatever school he wants to go to, I was able to become the first African American Commonwealth attorney for the city of Hammond.
Wow.
So my blackness is absolutely a benefit for me. And because of growing up in a hood, because of understanding where I've been and the journey I had to take, as rough as it may have been, it helps me to see individuals instead of seeing stats. I don't see
Yeah.
a mile when it just hit my desk. I see an individual. And because I see that individual, I can judge them based on what they did and where they've been versus just judging them based on a conviction or trying to get a conviction.
So you're not ashamed of your blackness then, either of you,
Oh, I
sounds
love my
like.
blackness. I love being me.
That's cool.
I know
I
that's right.
love being me.
Because I always wondered though, like, because you are both in very like the highest of your fields or as close as you can get to it. And I always wonder, and you can speak to this, is there this pressure to assimilate to the dominant culture and just kind of say, okay, well, I gotta tone it down a little bit or put this to the side to be accepted and to stay in my high position? Do you ever get any of that tension and you just ignore it, or do you feel it doesn't exist?
Okay, so early, Leslie, first, early in my career, being honest with you, I came on in the department 30 years ago.
Mhm.
And when I joined the police department, it looked a little different than it does now. It's gotten a little better. And it was a situation, if I'm being honest, I did assimilate to get along, to get to where I needed to go. My mindset at that time was that, and rightfully so, I mean, unless someone did anything, but I wanted to assimilate and learn to feel. I did have some encounters during those early years, but I was the kind of person I will address you one-on-one.
Mhm.
The environment today is bigger. You know, you go out and media is aware of it. It was just I had to be strategic, I guess, if you will. So coming up the ranks, I felt the need because I was always the only one. You know, I was the
Yeah.
only black detective in the bureau. I was the only black guy on the night shift by myself. You know, working Buckrow. You know, so I was always that one guy in lineup, and so there is this assimilation that you take part of. I never compromised my principles, and I
Okay.
had never would do that. But there is, and then the same people as you move up the ranks, you're judged in the police department. You go up for promotion by the same people that you work with, or that may be your supervisors. And so when they don't look like you want to make sure they're judging you based on your work, and if
Right.
that thing as opposed to something else. Now I have seen some others who early in their career get destroyed because they were fighting for different things, and and then you get labeled early, and then once you get that label, it's hard to get that label off you,
Yeah,
and it
you like
hurts
typecast.
emotions. And so early in my career, I was strategic in terms of making sure I didn't want to make any enemies, but I wanted to make sure I addressed issues if it pertained to me. And a real quick story, I got another one. I'm in a bureau as a detective, young detective, and they kept calling me. And this is back when The Wire was on, and The Wire was big, and there was a character on the show called G. They called him G. What's up, G Money? What's up, G? So I'm down there working with the other detectives, and everybody was calling me by G because of the character, and that annoyed me because I'm just like, I'm Kenny. Call me Kenny, you know. And part of it was like, oh, you GQ, and the emphasis was on the clothes I was wearing, you know, how I looked as opposed to lack of substance, you know, like my ability to be a detective. And I'm working homicides and robberies and things like that. And so the one guy was continuing to do it. I had to take him aside and say, hey, buddy, just call me by my name. You just call me. I call you by your name. You know, do that. You know, no G Money and that kind of thing, because the message that it was a negative one. So I would have those kind of encounters, nothing big, but I would address a person one-on-one as opposed to.
And kind of in that same line too, I know that both of y'all have seen prejudice, bias, or even maybe outright racism in your many years of experience. Is there any one particular instance that you can share with us that you recall happening to you or someone you worked closely with that you can call out just outright racism?
Okay, so I don't have a particular act, but I do have a situation, which is when I first got elected, a fellow elected, I call him a general, so to speak, because he was a very, very wise elected official. He pulled me to the side. I think we went to lunch. And he said to me, he said, okay, so let me give you the real deal. He said, as a Black elected official or highly appointed official, there's going to be an assumption that you're incompetent coming in the door. Without day one, without you having to do or have done anything wrong. There will be an assumption that you are incompetent until you prove otherwise, and you have to really do certain things to prove otherwise. And he said, however, if you were your white counterpart, there would be an assumption that you are highly qualified when you got elected, unless you really royally screw up. And I've seen that on display. I have seen that on display. But I'm going to tell you how my Blackness has helped me to deal with that. Because growing up, my mom always told me and my brother, you got to be twice as good. She said, make sure you get your sheepskin, because they can't take your sheepskin away from you. So growing up in the hood, you know, we couldn't afford college. So my mom gave me a book and said, hey, go where you want to go. So literally, I went to undergrad on a full scholarship, academic. I went to law school my last 2 or 3 years on a full ride, full academic scholarship, because they couldn't take that away from me. They can't take away being an intelligent Black man. And so I learned how to be twice as good. I learned to be a man of vision as a believer, as a Christian. So, because if I have a vision, God's going to give me provision. So you can look at my office 8 years ago and see it's totally different. And you can see the measurable improvements, because I already know walking in there, I got to show you what I'm all about. And so I have to do it from a standard where it can be objective, and no one ever can be able to say, no, you can't see growth. You can absolutely see growth. Anyone walking there from 8 years ago would tell you, oh, that's a different office, not because of negativity, but because of the positive direction it's gone.
I don't know what you would call this. I'll just explain it. So when I came through the door, similar to your experience, I knew I was going to make sure I got my education. So I used to sleep on the police gym floor, go to school at night, worked on 2 masters, working my way up the getting educated. Actually, I was preparing to leave to go somewhere else, but I loved to learn. And so I kept going, pursuing education. And then when people got wind that I had education, then they want to change the rules. So the emphasis was more about training. So when you came through the door, a degree would help you, excel through the ranks. But then the rules changed. Education is not as important, but yet we're living in a society where we want a more professional police officer, and education should value. Because in my career, the training was never available. It was always some reason why you can get the training, but I can always educate myself on my own. And that's what I pursued. And so now the rules change, and now training has taken a more importance than than the education itself. And so that's why I keep seeing the rules change within my career. And that's a part that you can call it whatever it is. But I noticed more and more people of color getting their education throughout the police department and was moving up the ranks. The rules change. So
I see that. Well, how about in your roles as high-level decision makers? What efforts, if any, have you made or promoted to improve diversity in your department or office?
Okay, so when I became Commonwealth Attorney in 2012, there were a few African Americans there, but it was a handful. And I at one point had been in that office, and of the 17 attorneys at one point, there were only 2 Black attorneys.
Wow.
And so Hampton is a majority minority city. And I believe that the office should represent the demographics of the city. And so what I did is I made an effort to hire individuals who not only were competent and had character, but they also reflected the demographics of the city. Because if you're going to prosecute individuals coming from the city, you should also reflect that city and reflect the values of that city. So that is one of the things that I was really, really aggressive in doing it. And I mean, I got a little bit of everything in my office as far as demographics, because I just like diversity. I think diversity brings opportunities. It bridges relationships. I think it also helps us to understand, because I think you have racism because people are afraid to know you. They're afraid to get to know who you are.
Yes.
And so because they're afraid to get to know who you are, race or of your particular religion or whatever it may be.
That's good.
I can tell you within our department, there's a lot of emphasis on diversity and recruitment, because it started with the recruitment, and it's where you go to recruit. And so we tend to recruit military out of the state, and we do look for diversity within our department. We're really good in that regards. I have been a cultural diversity instructor. Right now we're doing fair and impartial policing. We also have a liaison representative for the LGBTQ community. So we've been very progressive in terms of diversity. And we've been doing that going back to the 90s. So I would say we've been very up on it. Should our numbers be a little better than what they are? Yes. But we're working towards it.
I wonder, have y'all gotten any pushback from being progressive with like trying to achieve more diversity? Have you had any people like, no? What's that experience been like?
I heard, and I won't say from whom, but I heard that when I was hiring more Black attorneys, because I'll be honest with you, when I first took over, there were quite a number of white attorneys that left. And as our culture would call it, it was white flight.
White flight.
And so white flight, come on, we gonna keep it real. I'm gonna keep it real.
Yes, please.
And I'm not saying that their motivation was because I was a Black man, but that was the perception. And so because when they left and I began to diversify, then there was some things I was hearing that, oh, he's getting rid of all the white attorneys and he's bringing in nothing but Black attorneys. And it was no, there were only a few Black attorneys to begin with. So I'm trying to diversify the field so that our office reflect the demographics of the city.
I wonder if any of them wanted to get their jobs back, or if they're just still kind of bitter.
I've had a couple who tried to come back, and you know, I'm not a revolving door. Once you go, bye.
You are the law. You lay down the law.
When you go, God bless you, but you keep rolling.
No, that's funny. All right. Well, we can't have this conversation without talking about the movement. Y'all know all of the tragedies, the senseless deaths and things that have been happening over the last well, I wasn't gonna say a couple of weeks, but y'all know years actually. But both of you work in fields that put you out in front in the center of this movement. On one hand, Kenny, you lead the people that put their lives on the line to ensure public safety, while Anton, you lead the group of people that are tasked with holding people accountable for their actions. What are your respective views on what's going on in our nation right now?
Okay, so as a African American, we have problems. So I do realize there are problems in policing. You know, the police community is interesting. When you see things and that happen across the country, the first thing you're kind of like, well, did the officer do the right thing? Because you see yourself and you start thinking about what would I do in that situation. So every police officer, you have to see it that way. But I guess the thing that I constantly see over and over and over again is that why is it always an unarmed Black man and a white officer?
Right.
There have been some occasions with Black, but majority. And so I have to ask myself, and here again, you're talking to a father who has two boys, 17 and an adult son. And so I think about them. So when I look at it, yes, I look at it from the eyes of police, but I also look at it first as a father. And so, so for me, the protest, the movement, we've had maybe 5 or 6 in our city, and I've been at every one of them. I think we had one where there was some vandalism and some destruction that was going on in our PTC. Other than that, most of them have been very positive. But even the ones that got out of hand, I'm okay with the protest, not the violence, because this we got to remember, 60%. And Leslie, you and I have talked about this. You think about we're in the middle of a pandemic. 60% of African Americans are suffering from the pandemic, and then now a lot of people are not working right now. So if you start destroying the places where you live and the jobs, those opportunities, who's going first? We're going first. Yeah. And so you got to be smart and strategic when you put your people get together and protest. I'm okay with the protest. As a police officer, our job is to make sure you can protest peacefully and have a safe environment to do so. That's our role. In my career, I've been called to task for the Ku Klux Klan to march and had to protect their right to protest.
How did you feel? I'm sorry.
It's tough. It's tough. But the role of police is so people can have peaceful protests, not to be harmed, and protect them from traffic and other violence. Ooh. And so, yeah, that's tough. And so you always dealing with that dynamic when you're in law enforcement. So for me, there's some folks that have, other agendas, and I've seen a few of them at some of the protests. And then, and the other thing is, the other part is people want to be heard. I realize we've come to a point in this country that people need to be heard, and you better let them say what they got to say and support them. And I know in the city, we've been able to do that. In fact, every protest I've gone to this year, the 6 or 7, I'm talking to the people, and not just me. The officers are out there talking to people, exchanging business cards, and it's a good exchange. That dialogue, that discussion has to happen. And I got people calling me now and want to set up things in the future. So I think people want to be heard, and that's the venue to be heard, and we have to give them an opportunity to do that. So for me, the protest is well needed. I'm okay with the protest. Not the violence.
Okay. What about you, Anton?
So I love the protests. Okay, so let me. I'm a student of history, and one of the things I recognize is that if you don't learn from your history, you are failed or doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
And so when I look at the protests, my concern is, are we going to repeat the cycles of yesterday? Because we can look in the 60s and with the Watts riots and the riots when Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, and then we can look at back in the 90s when Rodney King was beating police officers and they were initially acquitted, and then we can now move forward in 2020, and we're looking at what happened down in Minneapolis, and it's like, are we going to learn to be strategic with our protests? Because if we're not strategic with our protests, we're not going to learn or move the movement forward. Now, for me, I believe that there are 2 things that people with power listen to, or at least they're afraid of. They're afraid of your vote, and they're afraid of how you spend your dollar.
That's right.
Those two things
that's
will
good.
move the needle each and every time. They're afraid of your vote, and they're afraid of how you spend your dollar. Let's go back in history. Apartheid. Apartheid was systematic racism. We knew it. It was going on. And Coca-Cola was a major distributor in South Africa. When Black people said, we are no longer going to purchase the Coca-Cola product. Anything that you're doing, we're pulling out. Until you pull out, we're pulling out. Coca-Cola for a minute held their ground. But when they looked at their bottom line during that stockholders meeting, they said, we got to do something about that, because they learned from the Montgomery bus boycott that after a while, if we don't do something about it, we're going bankrupt. And so they pulled out of apartheid. When Coca-Cola pulled out of apartheid South Africa, guess what? Here come everybody else. They opened the floodgate. And so we recognize that the dollar matters. African Americans spend about $1.5 trillion in the economy annually. That's a lot of money, but we have to be strategic in how we use it. The second thing is the vote. If you haven't been watching, that 1965 Voting Rights Act has been chopped up so many ways, filleted by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And then after the Supreme Court got through with it, here come your and I mean, I'm not trying to get political, but I mean, it is in those red states where you saw many of those governors and houses of representatives chopping up so many of those acts and chopping up so many of those protections that the 1965 Voting Rights Act gave us. And so you saw racial gerrymandering taking place, where only a select few minorities could be elected in that state because of the way the voting map was drawn. So if you don't think they are afraid of your vote, they are extremely afraid of your vote. Why would a General Assembly remove hundreds of voting stations and limit it to just a few when there's a pandemic going on? Because they know that people are afraid, and if the long lines don't discourage you, the pandemic is going to discourage you. They don't want you to vote. True. If I had to take a beach chair to a voting booth and wait in line to midnight to vote, that's what I would do. Because until you make them afraid that they're going to lose their seat, they're going to always vote with their heart. And right now, so many hearts are wicked.
Right.
Yeah.
But Tom, here's another thing, though. I think you can't sit on the sidelines. So my white brothers and sisters have to step out. You got to take a side, and you cannot sit on us. And we got to call them out. We have to call them out. We cannot it can't be just in my view. It cannot be just a black fight. It's human rights.
Yeah.
It's about American rights. And when it's funny how I used to be over animal control in my capacity here. And let anything happen to a cat, dog, people come out the woodwork.
Talk about it.
I mean, they will come and run over to City Hall, and people will. I'm telling you, Michael Vick. I mean, look at it. Murderer, go to jail. I'm not saying he's right. What happened?
Come on.
But people come out. But when you say Black Lives Matter, it becomes an issue for people when it should be about human rights. No longer, I think, that you can sit on the sideline. You got to call people out. Now, see, with this movement, people are calling people out. They're calling people out. If you got a friend that's white, you got to take a stand. This is about human rights. And I think that's another key point in this whole thing. You got to call people out and see where you stand, period. Because historically, going back historically, you look at, when you see the protesters of the 60s, you saw clergy, you saw white, you saw Jewish, you saw everybody there. It wasn't just black people when moving. And only then will we see the change that we need to see. That's what
I think that's something we talked about on the phone too, is if you can put your emotion with your strategy hand in hand, that's where change really happens, right?
Come on.
Because if you remember with the Civil Rights Act, I mean, not Civil Rights Act, but during the Civil Rights Movement, it was multifaceted. You had people who were boots on the ground. You had people who were lobbying in the legislative halls for like the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We had Thurgood Marshall with the Supreme Court, with Brown v. Board of Education and all the other things that were breaking down segregation. You had Martin Luther King in the White House with Johnson and Kennedy. They were all over the place because they were strategic. You had economic boycotting going on in Montgomery. You had everything. You had sit-ins. You had everything going on. But we cannot
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't be so narrow in our vision that we forget that we need everybody. Each person has a gift. Each person has a talent and ability to go and do something and make change. We all can make change work. So if we pull our strategies together, if we pull our gifts together, and we have a vision for where God wants to take us, we can take this giant of this demon called racism down.
Yeah. And I think what you said was key, like find my place. Where do I fit? I know I was talking to a female activist one day, and she said to me, Dr. Leslie, if the streets ain't in you, you don't need to be in the streets. I was like, well, that makes sense. Thank you. You liberated me though, right? Because we have this narrative that if I'm not in the streets marching, holding signs, doing protests, God bless that. I'm not against it. I think it's great. But who's making some decisions in some of these boardrooms? Who's lobbying? You know, who's voting? Who's doing some of these other things? So I like what you said. How do I find my place? I'm not just going to sit down on the sideline and do nothing. I might not be holding the sign, but I'm going to be somewhere doing my part, doing something.
There you go.
Because, and here again, and Leslie, we talked about this as well. People getting enamored with the protests. They want to, they doing Facebook, they doing, you know, doing the pictures and say, I was part of the movement. And that sounds cute and everything.
Right. It's a photo op, right?
Yeah, it's a photo op. It got to be on the protest. It has to be strategic and there has to be some action to follow. And then you got to continue to do it and continue to have the conversation. You know, I'll save it. I'm getting going. You got me going.
That is a hard part because, you know, we do have, and I will say my generation, and I'm not going to speak negatively about millennials because I am one, but we do have this whole persona that if it was not public, if it didn't happen on social media, then it didn't exist.
Right.
And it's like, and I guess that's the hard part, just getting beyond that. But I think our challenge to people is just make sure that we are doing something, not just for a photo op, because likes don't necessarily translate into change, right? Actions do.
Go. Absolutely.
But with your, do you have something else to say? Do you want to chime in?
Okay, so like when there was one protest that was going to take place, and I called up the organizer, and because I knew him and I had mentored him before, and I said, "Hey, I hear you doing a protest," and he said, "Yeah," and he liked to ruffle the feathers a little bit, and I said, "Okay, I don't want no foolishness. I don't want any foolishness because at the end of the day, you know what's going to happen if you bring some noise." And he said, "Yes, Mr. Bell, I already know what you're going to do." I said, "That's all I need you to understand. I want you to go out there. I want you to peaceably protest what it is that you want to protest. Make sure you communicate what it is that you want, what you think is right, and then make sure you leave peacefully. But if you start some foolishness and bring some noise, it's going to be some noise." And that's the other piece to it. If we are going to protest, we got to make sure we hold those in our environment accountable for that protest. Don't let someone hijack your protest, because then you take away from the cause and you take away from the movement. Make sure that if you're going to do the protest, do it right. Make sure that you're going to bring change as a result of the protest and not give them an opportunity to discount what you're all about.
Right.
Yeah. And just go ahead.
I'm sorry, Leslie. But people sometimes take peaceful as a negative. No, peaceful to me, you know what I'm saying? Peaceful protest is important because you don't want that negative connotation associated with the movement.
Right.
You know, you just don't want to do that. And I just feel like having a peaceful protest, then people can focus on the message as opposed to what action took place at the protest. So
yeah,
that's all.
So that's good. Well, speaking of organizers and things like that, have any of your offices made any efforts to partner with those leading the charge for change, or are you working with specific people or organizations? What fruit has that, or what is that like? Go ahead, speak to that.
So like I said, I made that phone call, and I've actually had multiple conversations with that young man in reference to that. In addition to that, I have been a part of, the mayor has put several forums together trying to work with young people to get their voice. Because here's the thing, young people are taking this to another level. We need them. They have the strength, they have the heart and the passion for it. So we don't need to push them to the side. We need to help bring them along. We need to help mentor them. We have to help guide them. We need to make sure that we are giving them the resources and the wisdom to be able to strategically move the movement in the right direction. So we've been partnering with several people or several organizations to try to do that. And I do it primarily that I have the privilege of being an elected official. I can do stuff outside of my office other than just as the Commonwealth Attorney, because it gives me a platform to be able to do these things. And so as a result of it, I do it because at the end of the day, I'm a Black man raising a Black son. And so I can walk down the street and somebody can shoot me just as good as they shoot somebody else.
Wow.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Well, have you seen a change in your office or department's dynamics when this movement really took off? Like, have you seen greater tension, frustration, or confusion with everything going on with the movement?
For us, yes. I'm tense. I'm
let Kenny go first.
I'm frustrated. You've been talking the whole time. You give me shit.
That's my favorite.
That's my brother. You know that. So no, it's been a lot of tension at the police department. I mean, all of us is feeling it. Like I said, you're out there, you're dealing with it, and you know that what is going on is not reflective of you. And I speak out even for a white officer, and that's not who you are, but you're catching it because of somebody in Kentucky or some other state is doing that. And so that's stress. And then, as I mentioned before, as a Black man, I'm sitting there and my people looking at me as I'm a traitor, like you're allowing it. Why are you not saying anything? So it's a lot of tension. And again, raising kids. But what we've done here as a police division is to have individual conversations. But just last week, we brought 2 sessions together, bring officers together to talk about it. And we had 2 forums. Chief starts off the conversation, and then he leaves and let the officers talk about the frustration. White officers talking to Black officer, Hispanic officer, men, women, and talk about their feelings to understand. And I'd share there was a comment made one time about, I think one of the incidents had happened, and it was somebody mentioned that, well, this person had this kind of record, as if that was important, and that led to his death, or he had drugs in his system, as if that was important to the reason it had nothing to do with the cause of death.
Right.
And so you had to educate that person and say, hey, no. When you do that, it's like you disregarding what we're saying to you. And you have to have that conversation. And I don't think it was done out of malice. I think it's just done out of ignorance.
Ignorance.
Do you think that conversation was well received though? Do you feel like the person got it after you enlightened them?
You never know if they got it or not, but but the conversation has to be said. And then let them reflect later, hopefully. You can smile in my face and do that in front of me, but I think it has to be said. No longer can we not have that conversation and not deal with touchy subjects like we're doing right now. And so we've done that within the police department. I can tell you there's some officers I know right now that's still struggling dealing with some of this stuff that's going on. And some people walked away from the law enforcement. Some young ones.
That's what I was going to ask too. Are they like, it's not for me?
Tough time. It's not for me. I had a young man just recently said it's not for me. It's not for me.
And did that bring even a greater strain on the department, like just having people walk away?
I guess for me, well, from the standpoint, this is not a job you can fake it. You have to be all the way in every day. Every night you go out there, you have to be mentally prepared and ready to go. If you're not, somebody get hurt, you get hurt. And we have these incidents that we're talking about. So no, when people are like that, I wish them well and just get another career field. Sort of Manning or something like that. But no, I mean, we're doing pretty good in terms of our numbers, but it is a conversation that everyone is having, and it is very tense for the officers. And again, Black and white officers alike, because if that's not you, it's hard. It's hard. And so we have to have those tough conversations are taking place.
So I guess you would say too that bad cops make it really hard for good cops
all around the country. Yes. How you see somebody, I do this at home. I don't know about you guys. You'll see somebody doing an interview on television, on the news or something. It's a Black person. And you sit there like, oh Lord, I hope he's articulate. I hope he can say the right things. Because we feel the pain we don't know him, but you feel that because you know that carries over to everybody in the race. Well,
right.
Law enforcement is the same thing. So when one person do something stupid, all of us take the hit for that. Even though we had nothing to do, we didn't have no shootings or situation here in Hampton, but we're all feeling it. They're protesting. So, but again, as I mentioned before, that's part of the burden we carry. We carry that, and the goal is to weed those guys out, weed those type of people out. That's right. Create an environment, make them uncomfortable. And if you don't like to answer your question, Leslie. So if you don't like the conversation and it's getting too much for you, then maybe it's time for you to change your career, get another job, do something different. You know. So.
Well, while we're on that subject, when you hear things like abolish the police or defund the police, what do you envision that looks like? Should it happen? Is it a reach? Is it necessary?
I think people, when they say that, I don't know if they thought it out, because I don't know if they thought it out. I think it became a little tag that everybody says it now, but really think about what you're saying. So if you want to dismantle the police, I don't want to live in a community with no policing. I want to reform maybe the police to make it better, but I don't want to live in a world with no police. So that's to me, I think you need to ask yourself, people who are saying that, what do you want it to look like? Now, in terms of defunding, the conversations I've had some of the conversations about defunding some of the programs, like mental illness is a big issue that we encounter every day. Overdose is a situation that police encounter every day. It takes up a lot of resource and time. The mental illness, drugs, homelessness, police is in that business too, and that take up a lot of time. So they're not responding to your calls because they're dealing with society's ills and things like that. So it would be nice if other programs could step in and take that burden off police. But here's the problem. So all our officers here in Hampton are CIT trained, which means crisis intervention training, working with CSB to deal with the mentally ill, to understand when I have a grandson that's autistic. And, we had training on autism and what that looked like. And, if you come across an autistic child and how to deal with that. So all the officers have been trained on that because that's what we encountered. But if someone's going to take that role and put more funding towards programs, CSB, for example, to do that, that's great. But this is what happens. People call police because that person is not on their meds and they're just destroying the store or they're being disruptive in somewhere. And CSB is not coming out there. It's going to be the police and count. And then by the time they come there, then there's an evaluation period. It may take hours and we're still tied up with it. So it'd be great. If you ask police officers, be like, great, you can take that. But I don't see how that can happen. Homelessness, there is an opportunity there that we can do something better with our homeless people. Drug overdose.
Okay.
That's another one. We encounter those now. We'd love for the medical community to come in and deal with most of those things. I think there's new law. Anton, you can help me on this. I think it's July 1st. I think now, if you
can't charge them,
anymore. See, but we're dealing with can't charge them anymore. So now when police go out to those calls, there's no paraphernalia. Even if there is, I think if there's paraphernalia, you correct me if I'm wrong. We don't charge them anyway. So let the medical field deal with that instead of police. If there's nothing to charge them with,
I think he's. Oh, there you go.
Go ahead. Can you hear me? Hello.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
Are you still there? Well, I do have a question for both of you. What are you doing about those in your department that are speaking against the movement on their social media accounts in your department and they're against it? How do you handle that?
Okay, so I'll take that one.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. You've asked a couple of questions about the environment and the stress level and all of that. Well, it's a little different for my office because I'm the boss. And so as you have a Black Commonwealth attorney who is the boss. And so, and like I said, in my office, there is basically a civil rights museum. So you already know where I am. You already know how I feel. You already know what I'm going to tolerate and what I'm not going to tolerate. Now, do I go and patrol people's social media accounts? No, I do not. However, you have to understand that it's always going to come to the attention of somebody. If you put something on social media, it's going to get back. If you say something on social media that is contrary to the policies of the city and of my office, then it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to fare well with you. And so I think people know that.
Action?
And so I'll fire you. I mean, everybody know that. I'll fire you. I wouldn't even think twice about firing you.
Is that
I'm gonna
your
tell you why I'll fire
reputation?
you. That's my reputation. I will fire you. And I'm gonna tell you why that's my reputation, because I believe that you should be a person of character just as much as a person of competence. And your lack of character is a direct reflect on my lack of judgment. And so if I allow you to not be a person of character, still prosecuting individuals, particularly if you have a racial bias, then that is a huge, huge mark and indictment against me and my lack of judgment, my lack of leadership, and my lack of character. And I'm not having it. And so, again, people will have to just be wise in what they do to make sure that they don't say anything or do anything that says that you have some type of racial balance either way, because you may say something that you don't like white people. That ain't gonna work well in my office either, because I don't play that either. I keep it balanced. But again, being a Black Commonwealth attorney or a Black boss is a different environment. And as far as like the tensions and stuff like that, we actually have had some wonderful one-on-one conversations throughout the office, two-on-one conversations in the office, educating one another just about how they grew up, how we grew up, and so forth. So I've been a part of a few of those conversations, and it has been extremely enlightening and educating to them. So I think I've had the benefit or had some benefits of the protests, because it has opened the floodgates for a conversation, because people really want to know. And then here's the thing, if you have a good heart, for the most part, people want to know, what can I do? Because I don't agree with what they did to George Floyd. But I don't know quite what to do, particularly if you are a Caucasian. I don't know quite what to do. I don't know if I say something, will I be offensive or will I offend someone? And so they don't want to walk on eggshell, but at the same time, they want to do something and they want some guidance. And so sometimes you have to give them the opportunity to be able to share where they are, and then be able to give them the guidance of how they can help to motivate or to push the movement in the right direction.
I think that was very helpful. And I see people saying, thank you for this candid conversation. So we told y'all we're going to be real, raw, and relevant tonight. But what do you think needs to change to ensure we're having these substantive conversations about these ideas and not just getting caught up in the hashtags themselves? So I think for me, it's always, we make people a hashtag and we're on it for about, a month or two, and then it falls down to the next scene happens and then we're back on it. What can we do to change that narrative?
Okay, so Habakkuk said, write the vision, make it plain, so that when they read it, they can run with it. So if you already know some of the policies that need to change, you need to start writing it down, and you need to start putting it in the face of those elected officials. So now it's accountability time. We protest, we've said what we need to say, or as some people say, I said what I said. So now it's time to write the vision and to put it in the face of those are the elected officials. If the elected officials do not want to come to the table, or if they refuse to be able to implement those things that can be readily implemented, it's time to move them out with your vote. Period.
Yeah.
But for the police department, I think we're doing a lot of the things. Just to note a few, the de-escalation training. Talk about before you pull out your gun, talk, de-escalate the situation. We've been doing that for some years now. Body-worn cameras continue. Every officer has to have a body-worn camera. And then when you don't have that camera on, stricter punishment. If you don't have it, because there's no reason why, unless it's a technical issue or something, and that can be proven, you should always have that camera on. but I can tell you in Hampton, all officers are equipped with cameras. Fair and impartial policing, continue the cultural diversity, the training and the recruiting. Transparency. And a lot of things I'm talking about now is adhering to the 21st century policing in Obama in the 2008 as president. So we have adopted at the police department a lot of those principles. And but technology, continue the community engagement like we're doing now. Continue to have that dialogue and education with the community so they'll know. Civilian oversight. When you talk about the internal affairs, have civilian oversight. We do have SEAC. We have that currently in place. So you can oversee some of the internal affairs complaints, the use of force. In fact, right now, I can tell you, I think starting July 1, when an officer stops anyone on a traffic stop or what have you, we have to note the race, the reason for calls for stop, all that has to be documented to keep a database of that information.
That's good.
Holding everybody accountable. So these kinds of things. And again, Hampton, I am very proud of our department because we are progressive in some of the things that we're doing. And then the other thing I would say is that demilitarization. And I will say, unless it's a special operation or something, you'll see us in uniform. We don't have all the vest and all the extra stuff on, look like we're going to war when we're out here policing the public. And so I think those are the things that we are doing and continue to do and try to get better at.
That's helpful to know because I was going to ask, do you feel that it's possible to create an environment to make racist cops feel uncomfortable? Is that something that's in the works, or what would that look like to create that sort of environment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think
before you answer, Kenny,
go ahead.
Okay, before you answer, can I throw this in there? Because this is one of the things I want to see, and I don't know if this even seems reasonable or whatever. But whenever there's a complaint, like in the George Floyd situation, my understanding is that officer had like 18 prior complaints in his personnel record. What I would like to see is anytime there is a complaint concerning abuse of authority or concerning something that the officer did involving integrity or racial bias or whatever, that information is immediately forwarded to my office, to the city attorney's office, to human resources, and to the city manager's office. Because what that does is when the officer knows it's going to go to all these individuals, now you're looking at HR issues, you're looking at whether you're going to be able to keep your job and your pension, and then you also looking at whether the Commonwealth attorney is going to charge you.
That's that accountability right there.
And it can't be hit.
No, and I agree with you. And in fact, what we do keep a file on people. Say if you're leaving not on good terms, we don't want you to take a bad officer, resign from our department and go to another department.
Right.
And there's a database. And so we've seen that in some of these incidents. And so I think there's some proposal right now on the federal level to have all, when you leave a department on bad terms or been fired or whatever, that you don't get hired. And there's a database that everyone can look at and say, oh, I see Ferguson on here. Nah, we're not picking them up. Because a lot of that information in the past was like, it was an internal affairs matter, it's confidential, you can't get that information or it was for you. We don't do that. We have transparency. So we keep our information on that employee. So if a new potential employer wants to hire that officer, they can come in and look and see that information, transparency. So we're doing that. But I think on the federal level, they're trying to make it a requirement that all departments are doing. I don't think all departments are doing that as of right now.
Mr. Bell don't play, y'all. If you hadn't seen,
no, he don't play.
not playing any games. But no, these are great recommendations. Well, before I let y'all go, we just got to talk about family just a little bit. So it feels like we're at a critical point in history. There's a pandemic going on. It's civil unrest related to disparate treatment experienced by Black Americans, and the world is watching and actually speaking up. But with all that as context, some of this has to follow y'all both home, and y'all all have already talked about being Black and being in law enforcement. So, but at some point, Kenny, you stopped being the assistant police chief, and Anton, you stopped being the Commonwealth attorney. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. But you become loving husbands and fathers, right? Men with Black families that are also watching the news, watching what's happening locally and beyond. How do you feel about all of this with having a foot in both worlds? How do you feel genuinely?
I go ahead, Andrew.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question. I'm having internet problems. Go ahead, say that again.
So
yeah,
I can start it.
Okay.
So for me, in dealing with that, it has been tough, as I mentioned. In fact, I lean on my family. I've had a lot of family support throughout this time. Pastor Leslie, Caleb, Bishop, Dr. Natalie, you guys have prayed for me through this very difficult time. So it has been probably, I can't think of another time in my career where it's been more challenging. And I think as I get older and the fact that I think about my kids more and they're out in the world, I'm probably more sensitive to the subject. And then when I continue to see things involving young Black men and I think about my boys, it is complex, it's troubling sometimes. And so prayers really helped me out through all of this. Anton and I, we're good friends. We pray for each other. When he's going through something, he's done the same thing for me. So for me, it's good friendship, prayer, and having good people around you, supporting you.
Okay. Yeah. So the question is loving, husbands and fathers, men with families that are also watching what's happening locally and beyond. How do you feel about all of this, having a foot in both worlds?
Well, I got a great wife. I have a praying wife. And so my wife, she prays me through a lot of things because she sees the side of me that no one else gets to see. And that's the person that may be discouraged about what's going on at work or in my profession, what's going on in the world. She sees the father who's concerned about the safety of his son, raising a Black boy, and even the concern of my family, making sure that we're able to get through the dynamics of the pandemic and everything else. And so my faith helps me to be able to really stand in the midst of everything that I see, because I'm gonna tell you right now, everything that can be shaken is being shaken right now. And so I just really believe that, God is allowing certain things to happen because he is shaking everything up. And so if you are not grounded in your faith, it's going to be hard for you to be able to navigate through a lot of what we're seeing today. And so it's really been my wife, and I got some praying. There some of them are watching right now. Some moms and dads who are just my heart, and they hold me up, and they hold me accountable. Because I'll tell you this too, being an elected official with as a prosecutor, people don't understand the authority that we have. We have a lot of discretion and unbridled authority. That's why I think even in Minneapolis, things got so tore up because the prosecutor did not immediately do the right thing. And so because he did not do that, everything just went haywire. So, but we have the ability to charge, to dismiss charges, to upgrade, to downgrade, to ask for incarceration, to ask for life, to ask for the death penalty. We have that ability. We have the ability to charge someone as a felon versus keep it as a misdemeanor and say, okay, we're going to work with that person and hopefully get them on the right track. So we just have so much unbridled discretion. And so you need the wisdom of God to be able to do these things. Yeah. And so, again, it's my wife and my faith that helps keep me rooted and grounded.
And that's even more reason to vote, too, because you don't want the wrong person in office.
No, you don't want an idiot in the office. You want somebody that got some sense. You want somebody who's going to have the heart of the people, and it's going to be a public servant. It's not going to be just concerned about getting the next conviction, because, again, public safety is not about just getting the next conviction. Public safety is about what is best for the community. And sometimes what's best for the community may be putting that person in an alternative program. If it's a nonviolent act, put them in an alternative program so that they don't have the stigma of a felony and they can be able to get a job they can be able to vote, they can be able to live in certain neighborhoods and be a productive member of society. And it's a win-win for the community. So you have to be able to balance it out. But if you are simply about, it's just another file, just another case, then that person doesn't need to be in that position. Because I can't afford to make the wrong decision. I got to be right every time because I'm dealing with someone's life. At the end of the day, I'm dealing with someone's life. And I tell people all the time, I ain't scared of people. You know, I don't let the suit fool you. I ain't scared of nobody, but I am scared of God. And I don't want to mess up with him. So it's important that you get it right.
Cool. Well, even with the family talk too, how do y'all discuss this with your families? I mean, has that been a challenge? Have you had to talk to your sons?
Yeah,
what is that like?
Yeah, my oldest son, we had one. My oldest son showed up at one of the protests, and because he's frustrated, he's angry, and he wants to do something, and I'm out there working. I didn't know he was going to show up, and I saw him there. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And because I knew the environment of that one, I wanted him to do what he feels is right, but also as a father, I wanted for him to be. So we had a long discussion. I wanted him to be safe, and I know he was angry with me at the time, and because he really wanted to do something to be a part. It's just because of what I knew about the environment at the time. I didn't want my son, and I didn't want someone to grab. I'm not worried about my son in terms of him doing anything wrong. I just didn't want someone to grab him or do something, and then now I can't do my job. And so I'm like, go somewhere else and do your protest, not over here with me, because I'm still a father, you know. And so it's been tough. And my youngest son did participate in one. There was more church, you know, it was church leading that it was the Juneteenth one.
Okay.
He came down and participated because he wanted to do something. They're asking questions. They want to have conversation. They talk to me all the time. They know their father. They know what I'm about, but they're tired. They see what's going on, and they want to be able to do something and be heard. And as a father, I got to let them do that. But I'm still a father. I want them to be safe, of course. And so it's been tough. Even my daughter, same thing. I mean, she is, she Black and I'm proud. I mean, she's just ready to go. And we had to have those conversations. And
is she scared for you ever?
Yes, they're all scared for me, of course, but because they for the obvious reasons, but they're tired. They're tired of seeing friends, people their age, and so they're frustrated. And I'm just trying how to channel that into a positive outcome. And that's the thing. As a parent, I want them to channel it so it doesn't compound your situation or people's situation. Be part of the change that you want to see happen, in a positive way. And so those are discussions we're having. And even my wife and I go ahead too. So I get to the point I had to turn TV off. I'm like, I'm done. I live it. I see it on TV. I'm a big sports guy. I see it all on the sports channels. I'm like, sometimes I have to walk away from it just to give myself a mental break. And then I get back engaged and go. But
I think just off the record too, that's a good question too. What are some of the things that you all are doing just to practice self-care, or what are you doing to kind of get away from it all that just really rejuvenates you and speaks to your soul or your spirit?
Well, for me, I am a big gamer. So I would be on my iPad playing Hearts and playing Spider Solitaire and listening to my worship music. I am a huge worshiper. I love worship music. And so to me, it just takes me to my place of calmness. It takes me to my place of just tranquility. I believe in setting the atmosphere in my home with worship. And so that just takes me to another place. And so even in my office, you won't be surprised if you walk in and I'm listening to a playlist of just worship music. I mean, I got a playlist called The Throne Room. So I'm telling you, I go in. And so the thing is, I can work doing that because to me, it's just a calmness. And I need a calmness because for those who know me, I can go to 10 real quick. And when I say 10, I mean, I can be a little hyper. And so I need to be more balanced and more calm. And so for me, that's what works for me.
Yeah, I'm very similar, Anton. I have I listen to my gospel music. I take walks. Me and my son. I have a Pac-Man machine.
Yeah.
Nice.
Old school.
Pac-Man machine. Oh yeah, I'm a Pac-Man champion. Anytime you want to, let me know. But
Old
that's what I
school.
do. Old school Pac-Man machine. So that's a lot of my stress goes. I deal with my stress that way, and I listen to my music, similar to you, very similar.
That's great. Well, I'm so grateful for y'all's time. We'll just do a couple parting thoughts. Um, with many movements, y'all know there'll come a time when this isn't front page news, when the number of people gathering will dwindle and the national attention moves towards something else. How do you think that people can continue to make further progress in this movement?
Well, as I said before, I think that you have to have an end game. And to me, your end game has to involve two things. It has to absolutely involve the vote, and it has to absolutely involve your dollar. Because I think those two things are the things that people really, really, it catches their attention and makes them, sit up and take notice when you are voting in a group or voting as a political powerhouse. Well, can I just go there somewhere
Please.
that we haven't touched on a little bit? And I know people always say, well, they're two different things, but no, it really isn't. I like it best as someone said before, I'm a coach at heart, which means I tend to deal with how we respond and what we do more so than what others may do. Because when you focus on trying to change someone else, you leave out the possibility that you can grow from certain situations too. And one of the things that I want our community to also begin to address as we address this, yes, we should address this. Yes, this should be a priority. And yes, we should make sure that we don't stop addressing this issue. So let me put that up there up front because I'm about to make somebody mad. But I'm about to make somebody mad. I know I am, but I don't care.
Let me set up for this one.
Okay. Can we deal with us? Can we deal with us? Because the thing that, as a Black prosecutor, that breaks my heart the most is when I see that 90+% of the homicides committed in my city are Black individuals killing Black individuals. That thing hurt me to the core. And it hurts me to the core because I see us get so enraged with how we look at a Caucasian person shooting a Black person, which in Hampton, I think our last officer involved shooting where it involved an Hampton officer was, how many years ago, Kenny?
About it's been some time.
4? Yeah, it's been some time.
But don't jinx it, please, Lord, no.
It's been some years. Yeah, but in Hampton, Newport News, Norfolk, because I talked to the Commonwealth attorneys in those areas, Portsmouth, the story is the same. The vast majority of the homicides are Black young people killing other Black young people. And my thing is this: if for 1 year, just 1 year, we don't kill each other for 1 year, what would our community look like? How would we grow? How many lives would be just at another level because someone didn't have to deal with the trauma of having to bury their son or have to bury their brother or their sister? And we're killing them in all different ways. We're killing Black men are killing young girls in relationships. There was a young man, teenager, who killed his 14, 15-year-old girlfriend who was pregnant. I mean, this craziness. For what? For what? And so that's the kind of stuff that I really want us to address, and not just address it with just a march and a song, or address it with a can we really, really address that issue and be honest and frank and start holding each other accountable? Because can I tell you what I see sometimes, many times, what I see is because we dealt with the trauma of dealing with bad police officers, unfortunately, when there is a black on black crime, we tend to be quiet and not say anything. And we tend to hide the perpetrator instead of saying, no, you killed one of us. You're going to deal with the consequences of what you did. But sometimes we will hide that perpetrator knowing who did it and not say a word. And that's foolishness to me. And I don't care who don't like it. I said it. I said what I said.
Mm-hmm. So I know you've been saying like a common thread for you has been to write the vision and make it plain. I hear you saying hold even Black people who commit crimes accountable.
Yes.
And then the third thing too is this: what would you suggest is another action step? Like why do you think the Black on Black crime happens? Is it like a lack of self-love or dignity or respect? What are some things that we can be doing to help actively change our communities?
Well, you got to deal with some of the underlying issues with crime, which is poverty. You got to address poverty.
Yeah.
You got to address the education system. Why is it that if you live in certain neighborhoods, your school is better because your economic is better? And so we just got to deal with that disparity in education. We got to address the employment issue because right now, even with COVID, we're looking at all of the unemployment that's going on. And we're going to take the biggest hit when it comes to the unemployment. We got to look at wage disparity. We're not making the same amount of money as someone who's comparable to us in the same career, doing the same identical job with the same level of experience. So we got to address those root issues that cause that. And then let's call it what it is. We got to talk about morality. We got to talk about morality because we have walked away from the church. And when I say we walked away from the church, we walked away from God, point blank. The morality, the moral compass in our community has been distorted because when we look at the civil rights movement, everything started with the church. It started with the church. Now people have walked away from the church. So you got to ask the question, why have they walked away from the church? Do they feel like when they go to church, they're not getting what they need to be able to be a productive person in society or to be a believer? Or has there been some trauma or some hurt or some brokenness that caused them to walk away from God? Because we got to address that issue so that now when someone steps on your shoes, you're not ready to shoot them because you're angry at your daddy who walked away from you when you were 2 years old and you haven't addressed that issue of rage with your dad. Come on, we got to go there.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, if y'all didn't get anything else, these gentlemen are dropping some nuggets. And I think one of the things too that we've talked about is just action, right? So it's not enough. The discussions are great. I think we need to have more of them. But what is the fruit that's going to come out of this? Like, what do you think sustained systemic change and progress looks like?
Well, I guess you got to decide what you want. What do you want to get? What are you protesting for? You know, so, and what that look like. So we talked about protests. What's the strategy? And then what action do you want or what you want to change? And I don't know, if you talk to different people, you get different answers. And I think that's where we got to start right there. What's the action what the change you want to see and figure that out.
What works in Hampton is not going to work in Camden, New Jersey.
Absolutely.
That's so true.
So in Camden, New Jersey, they literally defunded and disbanded the police department because it was crooked from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top.
Right.
It was just crooked.
So it needed to happen, basically.
It had to happen.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
They disbanded the police department. And what they did is they allowed the county to take over law enforcement until they were able to literally build again from scratch. And so what happened there doesn't need to happen in Hampton or Newport News or Norfolk because we're not dealing with the same scenario. But you have to take each jurisdiction based on what's going on in that jurisdiction as far as the relationship between law enforcement and the community, the policies that are being enacted, the environment that their leadership is trying to bring about. You have to take each one and deal with those issues accordingly. And so it's not a cookie cutter situation. It's based on the jurisdiction.
And that's one of the issues I have with the protesters, Anton, is because they're repeating what they see nationally but they don't have the same issues here locally.
No, no, they don't.
It's just a, it's just a hashtag. I mean, people are just saying because that's what you see, and that's just we don't have issues here like that.
Not
right.
You got, that's my point. Be educate yourself on what's happening. Get involved in your local government. Go to council. See what's being said. How many people that and say it all the time. How many people go to the city council meetings or pay attention to what's going on there?
I'm sure not many.
Right, and that's the issue. Inform yourself.
I see Bishop said something here. He said the same values that were instilled in you all still have to be taught today in our homes and communities, just so we can kind of replicate that what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Because I'm going to tell you what my mom used to say. She said, boy, don't go and put your hand on something that don't belong to you.
Right.
And then here's the thing. When I went to school, now, I mean, I wouldn't say this to my kid, but she used to say to me, don't you go down there and embarrass me in front of white folks down at that school, because you're not going to like what's going to go down if I had to come out to that school. I mean, so I was more afraid of my mom, who was crazy, coming down there, than I was of a police officer. Forget a police officer, call the cops, save me. Forget that, because my mom didn't play that. She wasn't going to let you sell drugs in her house. How many parents are letting their kids sell drugs in the house because they're getting a cut? I mean, let's call it out. It's what it is.
Let's be honest.
Come on, let's call it out. They're getting their cut. So they need to do that. I remember talking to my pastor, and she was trying to get a young lady enrolled in her program to get her GED, get some training, and go forth. And she was having problems with the mother of that young lady who had, she was a teenage mom. And she had a problem with the mother of that teenage mom because she was thinking her check was going to get affected if that young girl got her GED and got off welfare. Come on. We got to do that.
Education is so key. Like, we have to educate parents. We have to educate children. Yes. Like, it's just widespread. Isn't that what scripture says too? My people perish for a lack of knowledge. So we need education, we need exposure, and then we need implementation, right? So it's not just enough to know about it. How do I implement this thing so I don't lose another generation?
Right.
But y'all, this was so helpful. Y'all let us know in the comments if y'all thought that this was beneficial. Do you think we should keep doing things like this? Anything that y'all learned? I just want to see how y'all feel about this. I know even for me, there are just certain things that I've even heard that as a pastor, as a person, has just called me to accountability. And I want to step it up. I need to myself be at a couple more meetings, doing more, civic engagement. And also, I think sometimes people don't speak or mentor, impart into other people because they feel, well, I don't know that I have enough, or I don't know if I have anything to say. Mm-hmm. But I would beg to differ that there is something inside of you that you could be imparting to somebody else.
Yes.
So I definitely, for one, learned so much from this interview. So thank y'all so much. Let's see. Let me tell y'all what other people are learning too. Oh, here's a point right here. Somebody said, now parents are scared of disciplining their own children. They have stopped holding parents accountable.
Foolishness. I had a case where they charged the father for spanking his son, and he was from Africa, and so he was.
All y'all's parents would have been in jail.
Oh, my mom would have been locked down for life. Let me tell you right now, old school life. But I was like, I'm not gonna lock that man. He was spanking him on his buttocks. I'm like, I'm not locking him up. Go get you some parenting classes and go about your business, bro. I am not locking you up for that. That's the kind of craziness. That's crazy to me. You got a father in the home that is trying to raise their child up, because if I don't spank them, the streets gonna spank them. So somebody better do something.
And if I had to take my pick. So y'all are getting so many positive comments.
Absolutely.
Oh, you had something to add to that? Go ahead.
Yes.
This says, this was good. Thanks for keeping it real and not being too buttoned up. That's a good comment right there. Let's see what else. Do this until things change. Mm-hmm. This was very good. Keep the conversation going. Thanks for your support and dedication. We need this kind of discussion in order for real movement to take place. A lot of people are thanking y'all for just dropping major gems and wisdom tonight. So let's see. Someone says we should keep this segment going. We learn more when the knowledge is shared from other people. So do y'all have any parting thoughts? We'll start to wrap up. Anything that you want to say to those who are watching? I am sure this is going to get several views, even on the replay, because this was a great discussion. And I don't know. This was just a wealth of knowledge. And I don't know that most people would just have access to this. So I just want to thank y'all for coming up here at 7:30 at night and giving us 90 minutes of your time. Like, that is massive. And we are so grateful for y'all. But if you have any parting thoughts, please share with us.
All right. Well, Dr. Leslie, only thing I would say is thank you for having us and allowing us to be here to have this discussion. And for you being progressive, I participated, Anton as well, participated in the cultural shock, I think a couple of years ago, educating our kids before the George Floyd. We were talking about how to survive a traffic stop and letting people know about our lives and get to know us as people. And so I think you continue the conversation is what I think we need to continue to do, because I think we educate people get to know their prosecutor, they get to know their police, and police have to continue to engage in the community because they got to get to know us. If you're afraid, we tend to be afraid for things we don't know and we don't understand. But when I get to know you, I have a different impression of you and how you do things, and we can have that dialogue. So for me, continue on having the discussion, but as it's been mentioned several times, people sitting on the sideline got to stop. You got to make a choice. You have to make a choice. Are you going to stand for what's right, or you're going to be on the wrong side of history? Because there's a movement going on that's unlike any other, and I think it's going to be a revolution. So I just believe that there's change is going to come, and young people today are looking and thirsty. They want to see that change. And the only thing I would say is be strategic, vote, and have a plan of action on what you want to see and stay involved. It can't be just about the protest.
Thank you.
I would say just be the change that you want to see. That just as basic as that. Just be the change you want to be. Be the change you want to be for not just external factors, but be the change you want to be internally, in your community, in your home. Be the change that you want to be. So if you don't want anybody committing crimes against you, don't you go out there and commit crimes against others. Be the change that you want to be.
Yeah, that was helpful. Well, thank y'all for your service, for your commitment to our great city of Hampton. I think there probably is an election coming up again soon.
Next year.
Will you be running?
Justice.
Everybody, he rang that bell tonight. Okay, so y'all got
ring the bell.
An inside look of what our Commonwealth Attorney of Hampton does and cares about the people. And so, I mean, even I appreciate you and Kenny just being able to call wrong, right? And I'm not gonna make this another 30 minutes, but that's huge, even in law enforcement and places of power, to be able to say right is right and wrong is wrong. We need more people like that. So we are praying, of course, God's richest blessings upon you, that God just grant you even more wisdom and favor in all of your endeavors, and that the angels of the Lord will keep you protected and give you peace all of your days. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, good night, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. Share this link before you go to bed. Other people, ring the bell. Keep Kenny Ferguson in the police department, because he's amazing as well. And we'll see y'all again next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night.